or twice before. So we'll this will be the informal, formal post-mortem. So thanks, guys, for joining. We're not going to make this really too long and drawn out. We kind of had like the more informal kind of just situation check-in, or just make sure that we got any initial feedback from people when we had the call a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now. Gosh, time is just flying by. You know, I would just say that, I mean, overall, in terms of the event, I think, you know, there were a lot of really amazing developments that happened this year that, you know, I'm really glad that we pushed for, especially, you know, in the area of the Raspberry Pi or APRS appliance. I think the findings there, and Don, I'm not going to put you necessarily on the spot, but you know, if you had anything else to share as far as like any data that you collected or anything you've had to think about since the event that you might want to share, but I'll give you some time here in a few minutes. But you know, there were a few takeaways that I had for this year that I'll just kind of share openly, and that is, number one, my new motto is shit happens. I've coordinated this event. This is the 4th year in a row, and it is also the 4th year in a row that I did not expect there to be some last minute changes that took me by surprise. And so there were some changes that kind of I was not prepared for. And I think, you know, just going forward, that the way to address is, number one, anticipate that there are going to be issues, and number two is to have some sort of a backup strategy or some redundancy in place. And that's why I'm so glad about the APRS appliance success this year, is that the redundancy piece has been challenging in the past. This has been a 100% Kenwood event years prior to this. And, you know, Kenwood's not making these radios anymore. And the ones that we do own, they're getting older, they're starting to fail. And we end up in a situation like with Comers, where we had, you know, both of the usual offenders that had to back out last minute due to an emergency deployment, Ares deployment in Virginia. You know, had they not been able to get a Kenwood radio out to Josh, would have been it, right? I mean, that would have been the end of the all the other sites south of Commerce wouldn't have even been much of a point in them showing up. And then, you know, unfortunately, Glenn had a family health emergency. Thankfully, was able to work around that. But you know, let's just say, so we have plenty of people to do the event, but not everybody has a Kenwood. Well, then what? Well, that's where the appliance comes in, is that I think this year proved that it performed better than expected. You know, I didn't want to set expectations too high, because I don't like to, you know, I don't want to be in a position where I set the expectations so high that we can never attain them. So from my standpoint, I felt like, you know, I set them at a moderate level, and that we exceeded the expectations that I had set for the event. And, you know, I think going forward, we could even be so aggressive as to say, you know what, next year we might not need any Kenwoods at all. And Don, you know, like I said, I'm not necessarily putting you on the spot, but, you know, I'm just curious as to like what your feedback would be, you know, coming in off of the event and seeing and having some time to digest everything that you know, that you took in from everyone that participated.
Sure. So the first thing that hit me is that the appliance at 1200 baud, it appears to be solid as a rock. There were actually a lot of different implementations of it in terms of the detail hardware, but consistent with the same design. And at 1200 baud, they all work flawlessly. 9600 baud is more interesting. One of the things we're discovering is that radios that claim they support 9600 baud may not in fact support 9600 baud. So for 9600 baud, we've got to do some more work, but we had 2 stations successfully transmitting 9600 baud with the appliance, and it was being received cleanly by D710s. And so we have confidence that if we do the work with the radios, it's the radio problem, that we can get 9600 baud working equally as well. And there are some potential opportunities for 9600 baud that could make it even more reliable than we could ever hope to get from a Kenwood, particularly implementing forward error control. All the implementations at 9600 baud this last round, we're putting the most aggressive forward error control in. That was part of the configuration. And that all cross-worked with the other systems. So we know it interoperates. We just don't have a good test yet to see if it provides the robustness we might otherwise might have hoped for. A number of us are getting together at Ham Exposition, and we're probably going to start the exercise on working with the 9600 baud and trying to see if we can get more experimental evidence for that. Yeah, I think that handles it. Any questions? Okay. Now, the other thing I'm going to point out is John Tarbox here? No, he's not.
He is not, unfortunately. No.
Right. So John Tarbox has been able to get, last I understood, a session on the AT Golden Packet, APRS, and the appliance at Ham Exposition. I believe it'll be Sunday, which I think is August 26th. So there's a joint presentation by a number of people from the northern section who are doing their testing that's going to be held at Ham Exposition in Marlborough at the end of August.
I think John roped me in. This is Tim K1YBS. I think I'm kind of involved with that, Don. I think you might. Are you going to be there too?
Yes, I have to give a presentation on Saturday, but it's
Me
just
too, yeah.
for me. I'll be there Sunday as well.
Where is it?
Marlborough, Massachusetts.
Okay.
I think, Don, we'll probably, right? Why don't we all keep in touch and do some testing when we're there too?
Yeah, no, that was the goal. Bring equipment, test, and particularly test 9600 baud. I must commend you, Tim, on your successful efforts of 9600 baud of Katahdin. My hat is off to you. That is a true tour de force.
It's no big deal, man. I mean, I think bringing the equipment up was the hard part. The 9600 was easy. That's all you for setting up the appliance. I appreciate that.
Anyway, that's all I've got to say. Any comments, questions? All right.
No,
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, Don, thanks again for for all your efforts, and it's just amazing work. And I think there are a few other areas that I just wanted to touch upon. First of all, so this is the first year, and I'd hoped to. I just got a lot of crap on my plate, guys. Sorry, but I'd hoped to put together a report with the inventory. So we got a 100% response for the first time ever on site equipment inventory. I mean, I can share the raw results with everybody, which that's plenty easy to do. But also wanted to try and get something in a little bit more of a more eye-pleasing format. Let me just share this with you guys right now, just so you can at least take a look at it in its current form. I'm just going to share it through the Zoom chat for the time being. Some other things that and then as far as like the trip reports, so the trip report, we received responses from all but one. So it looks like from what I can see here, Sam's Point 10 is the only one that we had not gotten a report from. I'm feeling pretty good with that many, with the 14 out of 15 sites. I think the closest we'd ever been in the past was 8. So I'll take 14 out of 15 any day. I'll share those responses with you guys too in just a moment. So two different Google Sheets links in the chat. And again, I'll write up something a little bit more formal to send out to the group on groups.io. That way everybody has access to this data. Some thoughts that I had just kind of been mulling around was 5, 6, 7. So what is that? Comers, Hawksbill, or not Comers, Hawksbill, MD Mountains, and then AO Mountain. This is the third year in a row that we've had breaks in our normal comms at one of those. I don't know that we've necessarily been able to pinpoint exactly which one of the sites that it is. But part of me is starting to think, you know, maybe we need to find a different location for one of those sites, or maybe all three of them. Scientifically, I don't like changing multiple things all at once. It makes it really bad experimentation practice, but you know, it's something that I've been thinking about is, you know, maybe Hawksbill is just a bad location. And I don't know if, Brian, I don't know if that's something that, you know, that maybe you can help with the RF site plans. Maybe we take another look at that, maybe in, you know, at some point in the next few months as we start thinking about next year's event, about potentially finding another location. There's another one too. So I heard from a few folks that there was potentially interest in doing something more frequently than once a year. You know, maybe not the entire length of the trail, but you know, even more like regionalized events. You know, anything that you guys have thought about, you know, hey, I really enjoyed doing this year. I would love to do more of it next year. Or, you know, hey, I've got this idea about doing something that, you know, we hadn't considered in the past. Please, you know, share the ideas, because, you know, we want to make this something that's of interest to as many as possible. You know, there's over 140 people that are in the group on groups.io. But I think about 25 people are really actively involved in the event on a yearly basis. So we've got a lot of casual observers that there's opportunity there to try and get more folks participating. And then of course too, you know, adding in the APRS appliance means that you don't need to be in the Kenwood Club to be part of the event either. So I don't know. I mean, a few different points I covered there. I'm just curious as to what, if that, you know, evokes any
Hey,
thoughts.
Jeff, question.
Yes.
Hawksbill was a weak link. I probably should take the hit for that. I used the handhelds. I've used them before. There was some comments made during our last session that Bob frowned on that. Bob was the one that provided me with, and then pointed me to his website about setting up the D72, which I'd used successfully at both Mount Washington and Greylock. But moving forward, I think it's great we're experimenting, but I would like to continue to press on with the commercial device I'm using, which does both 12 and 96. I have a 10-acre farm in North Carolina, and before setting it up there, I tested it with the D72. It had no problems doing both 1200 and 96. The issue I had was I was going to bring a TM281 with me, but the batteries that I had didn't support the power budget. So I had to go with the handhelds. So moving forward, I would like to continue, whether it's at Hawksbill or some other location, using the WX3-in-1, because it's for somebody who doesn't have the time, and I really don't have the time to work on the appliance. I would love to. I've got a TNC micro that Jason provided, 2 of them that are sitting here that still aren't assembled to experiment with. So that device offers some opportunity to people who don't have the time, the inclination, or the desire, or even the money to take and do one of the appliances, and it's a viable commercial option. So
Sure.
I would like to continue with that. I think the issue at Hawksbill was simply power budget. You know, the TH6 puts out about maybe 5 watts. The D72 did a little more. I did an SWR and a power reading before I took them up there to see which did better. So, I mean, I appreciate everybody putting the effort into the appliance. It's a great technology, and Kenwood is out of the business, so I'm told, although they say they may do a recovery, but there might be some other viable options, and I don't think we should lock ourselves into one. You know, I learned a lot from this experience. I'd never been to Hawksbill. I tell you what, I almost gave up in that downpour. I had a poncho on, I had trash bags over the equipment, and I humped all 50 pounds up by myself. My girlfriend was a ham, was supposed to go, but she had COVID two weeks before what we both did. She had really serious respiratory. There was no way she was going to make it up that mountain, and it was challenging for me. So there are other considerations. doing it more than once a year. I think that would be great if we could do local live groups, because I want to push forward too. One of Bob's comments many years ago, I think I started doing this 5 years ago, and in the last 5 I missed one, was it's a technology demonstrator, and it's also a fun event to have fun. I don't want to see that it becomes a chore for anybody that's participating. And I give Don a lot of credit for developing the appliance and how well this has been tested. The group's done a great job. Wish I could participate, but I'm a geo bachelor. I work for the Army at Fort Meade. My home is North Carolina. I drive down there and telework Fridays. I don't have a lot of free time to participate in the additional endeavors. I don't
Mhm.
know if there's others like that, but I would think locking other people out because we're going down one single path without keeping others open might not be the best choice.
What is, I'm sorry, locking people out in what regard?
Well, if you're going to just use the appliance and not
Oh, yeah,
allow
yeah. Yeah, no, I was
any
gonna
other
say like, yeah,
experimentation.
when when I say that, I'm not saying like, making it a non-Kenwood event, right? Taking Kenwood out.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, I'm just saying that like, as far as like the aggressiveness, right? I think this year uncovered the fact that it is indeed possible to do something like this without Kenwood being, an integral part or at all part of it, right?
Yeah, they're APRS radios. Yeah, I get that. But the 3-in-1 I've used for 5 years is an iGate in Norfolk. It's rock solid. The radios are typically the limitation, and it requires, especially at 9600, some significant tweaking. As I'm sure Don is aware, the performance at 9600 is far more critical. And then having path conditions like they were, the conditions at Hawksville were terrible. We saw sun in late afternoon, but I mean, literally, it was a torrential downpour going up and setting up. I might have been able to do a little better because I had a laptop with me, which I could have logged into the 3-in-1 and done some parameter changes, but I wasn't taking out my expensive gear like that, and because it was continuously drizzling and raining. So just a point to consider moving forward.
Yep, absolutely. Great points all around. Anyone else have any comments? So the comment you made about weather actually it was one that kind of this would dovetail nicely off of. So I know, Tim, I was thinking that like up in your neck of the woods, it's already kind of chilly up at the top of Katahdin, even in July. It's not that case in the south. It's blazing hot. It was miserable on that Saturday, and we did get a little bit of rain, but we've also, I mean, we've been getting years where we got a lot of pop-up storms or lightning, and I'm starting to wonder is maybe middle of July not the ideal time for the event. And I'm not saying we're changing it. I'm throwing out the idea of, if we were to change it, would that be something that people would be receptive to? Understanding, I mean, there's all different climate conditions all over, and we've got what, 2,200 miles of trail. Chances of there being bad weather somewhere along that path, or chances of there being good weather the entire length of the path, are pretty slim to begin with. But just trying to think about maybe moving it up or out, a month or two, is just something that I've been mulling over.
Well, remember they changed Dayton Hamvention some years back because of weather considerations. You just can't do it in winter. Mount Washington and Mount Greylock are not very hospitable, but maybe spring or fall might be a better choice.
Yeah, that's kind of along the lines of what I'm thinking. I've been thinking of something more in like the fall, like September timeframe instead of July. But like I said, it's really just something to think about, because I mean, as of right now, I mean, what it was this year I had bad weather in Georgia. Last year did we have bad weather at GD Hill too this year, or is it MD Mountains? One of the two.
I think it was Comer's this year that had to shut down, and I know they shut down last year early for the same reason. I don't remember the site.
Yeah, Camelback had lightning last year, so they said they were taking their antennas down like right away because of the lightning situation up there. So, I mean, it's not at all uncommon, but every time of the year has its own set of challenges. And my biggest concern is the folks up in like John and Tim up at the very north ends that you know, having to be concerned that these guys are going to be up there freezing their butts off. I don't want to jump from one extreme to another.
September's good. I mean, it's nighttime, it gets chilly, but not really, you know, so if you guys were considering moving it, I'm totally fine with like September. I think the October, the park might start shutting down some of the, at least in Maine, some of the facilities. So I'm gonna look into that and I'll let you know, Jeff. But October's a beautiful month for us too. Probably a bit more rainy than September, but it's still fine.
Yeah, maybe I'll check just like average weather conditions in September.
Yeah, I
September
think
seems-
Mount Washington's worse in October, definitely. But you know, the station up there usually is John has a nice van, so and that road I think is open until November.
okay. Anybody else have thoughts on the matter? John, I see you were able to join. Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize for being late. I was late getting home from a medical appointment. Yeah, I have a van. I can put a heater in it by next year. I noticed today was 53 degrees on Mount Washington, and this
Oh my
is
goodness.
August. So when you get into October, the issue isn't so much the cold. It's more like you don't want to be driving up there in a snowstorm.
Yeah, we're thinking September, John. It's kind of what we're looking
Yeah.
at.
Yeah, if it's good for Katahdin, well, it's not really true that if it's good for Katahdin, it's good for Mount Washington. But if Tim can do Katahdin, I can 99% true I can do Washington.
All right. That was, I mean, you know, I don't want to necessarily say that's it, but I want to see if anybody else has any comments or anything that they wanted to share. I mean, I didn't really have as much prepared for this as I had wanted to. Work has just been my entire life recently. So it seems.
Many of us know that feeling. I would suggest you put it out on the list to ask for comments from anybody. There's always people that seem to pop up when there's a hole. So you might want to put it out to everybody that signed up on the list to see what their thoughts are changing the date.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I would not mind doing it in another time of year. It was brutal up there this year, and the bugs. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's
They
what
were
I was
like
gonna say.
They're like helicopters.
Here in Virginia, as far as the summer's concerned, we just can't get away from the bugs no matter what we do. So
Yeah.
I'm a cold weather person anyway, so I would much rather be out there in 50-degree weather than 90-degree weather.
No
but-
doubt.
But that, yeah, I would agree with that. I was just kind of listening to what everyone else was saying before I chimed in. But I would late September would even be really good for me. I'd be perfectly fine with that. Now, sounds like maybe some of the other more mountainous areas might be dealing with a little more harsher weather that, as the later you get in September. But at least here in Virginia, as they say, the Appalachians are older, shorter mountains. So they say our winters aren't as bad, but I don't know about that. But
So,
you might want to
yeah,
ask
so-
the guy from Canada about winter.
Yeah, well, that's like I've just been thinking, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, right? Those
Yeah.
are the states that I was like mostly concerned with shifting it to a cooler time of the year. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't even know that it changes all that dramatically here in Georgia. The temperatures don't really start cooling off until, late September, early October. We don't really start getting cold until
It's kind of the
November.
same here. That's why I said
Yeah.
if we did shift it towards late September,
Yeah.
that's where I would definitely see a big difference, and I would be fine with it. I just don't know how many other people would be. So
Yeah.
Well, I just checked the Graylock Road dates. Graylock Summit is no longer accessible by car after mid-October. So that
Okay.
looks to be a firm boundary for Graylock.
Okay.
I would
That's
think
good to know.
Mount Washington would be even sooner than that.
I think you're safe if you keep it like to the end of September, but
Yeah, I'm
I'll
thinking
check
like the third
Washington.
weekend of September is what's coming to mind right now. Which, let's see here.
There's
That
some
way-
climate records that have been set at Mount Washington. So I would probably gauge that one or the Canadian area as the gauge to when you might be able to move the date to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so that's another point I wanted to raise too, but yeah, if we were looking at September, we would be looking likely either at the 16th or the 23rd. So that's was it the 3rd and the 4th Saturdays in September? There's actually 5 Saturdays in September this a year away, but that's interesting.
And
It
just
might
for
be-
the record, Mount Washington Auto Road closes October 23rd this year.
Mount Washington, October 23rd. Okay.
Yeah, sounds like it's a week after Greylock.
It might be worthy to just sit down and pull the climate data and see when those two historically have their snowstorms. Because I've driven Mount Washington twice. It's great in the springtime, not bad in the summertime. I don't think I'd want to try it anywhere near where there's inclement icy conditions.
Well, I think at Mount Washington actually has the wind speed record for the entire Western Hemisphere. Was it 231 miles per hour?
If you go up there and look in the little museum, they have some pictures of the building, and the building has chains over it because of the potential for wind.
That's amazing. Yeah, Mount Washington's famous wind gust of 231 miles per hour recorded on April 12th, 1934 at Mount Washington Observatory. The record for the fastest surface wind measured in the northern and western hemispheres. That's pretty amazing. Oh, that's actually the Mount Washington Observatory website. Interesting.
There's also a post office up there, if you can believe that.
Is it really?
Yep.
That's a riot. That's awesome. It was a shame Lynn was not able to make it. I was hoping that that he would be able to join us tonight. Yeah, I mean, I guess, we can just kind of, we do a good job of communicating with each other electronically, so we can just kind of keep the ball moving on this discussion on the group. And we are going to continue with the knowledge share sessions this coming year. So that'll, for at least for now, second Tuesday of the month, same as always, which would mean the next call would be on September 13th at 7 p.m. Don't have a topic yet, but definitely will. And we'll announce what the topic will be as far in advance as possible. If anybody has any suggestions or recommendations, who you think would be a good speaker or a good topic to cover, you're not signing yourself up to present by suggesting something, so I promise you that. Yeah, I mean, we try and build out another good solid program this year like we did last year, if not, maybe even make it even better.
One question, and I'm not that familiar. I went to HRO a couple of weeks ago. I'm from Orchard, I'm in driving distance. Yaesu has put out 2 radios that do APRS to a degree, but I don't have a lot of details. I talked to the HRO staff. I don't know that they do Digi, but they are APRS, similar to some of the older Kenwoods. Has anybody had any experience with those?
Yeah, I've had some experience with the Yaesu. Hell, hang on a second for me, and I'll try to figure out what model is. It's got about a 4-inch, roughly 4-inch by 3-inch color screen.
Is it the
I know
FTM
several
3DR? Yeah.
FTM
Yeah.
400.
Is that is it the 400?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I know several people that have it. They love it as far as, a regular APRS mobile device, meaning that, it's beaconing or position. It's got GPS built into it, which is convenient. It receives station lists, I think you can do messaging with it. But that's my understanding. That's kind of where it stops. It's almost like Yaesu was really on a roll, and then they were like, "That's it. That's enough."
Yeah, so their radios, I don't believe whether it's their HTs or their mobiles, according to, so the guy who was supposed to activate Stone Mountain this year, he was going to run the Yaesu mobile, the FTM 400, and it does not support digifeeding. It
Right.
also does not support UI flood. And my understanding from what Lynn said is the UI flood is important because it's the only thing that allows us to support hop count that we need for the Golden Packet.
When I was at Dayton, I went and talked to the Yaesu guys there at their booth. Actually, I went to ICOM first because I know the product manager over there, but he kind of jumped in my shit and really was a real bastard. So I actually kind of walked away from that and thought, I'll never own another ICOM product again. Anyways, that's beside the point. But I did go over to Yaesu and I was trying to talk to the guys over there. And this was going in with the surface knowledge that I think we all had, that maybe Kenwood was kind of done. Kenwood wasn't at Dayton this year, which was a big shot in the foot as far as I'm concerned, you know, as far as, or let's just say it was a big awakening for those of us who were wondering, like, I wonder what Kenwood's thinking. Well, they weren't there. So take that, you know, read into that how you want. Anyways, I talked to some of the ASU guys there. And again, you know, you never know if you're talking to a product manager or if you're just talking to a rep or whoever. And I kind of laid that on them. I said, hey, you know, you Yins have the chance to really take the bull by the horns here. You already have a product that's like 90% there. And I was referring to the 400. And they were like, yeah, you know, we've heard a little bit of that, you know, but they weren't really, I don't think they were taking this seriously. And I don't know what it would take for them to take that seriously. You know, I don't know, you know, what kind of response they would have to get in a survey, so to speak, you know, or whatever for them to even consider that. But it seems like they're so close, you know, they're so close. Adding DigiPeer functionality. I mean, am I off base in thinking, is that really the one thing that's missing, right? DigiPeer, UI flood, and DigiPing.
Yeah, and I think those are the killer features that
Yeah, if those were there, we could all run out and buy one of these 400s tomorrow. Hell, I'd probably buy 2 of them. You know what I mean? Just
Yep.
you know. So, anyways, that's just my 2 cents on the subject, because I was at Dayton. I tried to talk to those guys. Of course, they looked at me and are like, who the hell is this guy? You know, no one knows who I am. So it's not like I was there on any kind of authority, but been around APRS a long time. And I know what I get really excited about. And I know what I look at and go, I don't think
that's
that's
the other thing too, right? Is that was why I asked Lynn these questions about the Yaesu, was for exactly this reason, right? Is okay, so Kenwood, you know, Yaesu has, I mean, outside of like standalone TNCs, right, or external TNCs, the only other company that's really making Anytone has APRS support for what it's worth. And
yeah, I've got one of those, and it's we're not
average.
writing home about that.
But yeah, so the question is okay, you know, so DigiPeeding, yeah, we know we need that, but the UI flood, you know, is that something we could do without? And my understanding is we cannot.
Okay.
So we even had John WB4APR, you know, baked support for UI flood into Direwolf in the dev branch. So that was how we were able to use it this year. Had we not had that, Direwolf would have been off the table.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing that I'm toying with, and I'm passing this around with a couple other friends right now. We're just talking. Most of you know that if you have an RC D710 or even just a D710 head, you can plug it into a V71, which is actually what I did for our event, because I don't own the D710. I own an RC D710. I used to have 2 of them. I stupidly sold one. I never should have. But I own a V71, and all I had to do was plug that into the V71 and essentially create a D710 non-G. Well, I've been tossing around the idea with a couple of people of, you know, what would it take to develop basically a RC D710 type device that we could plug into a V71 to do that exact functionality, because we already have a lot of it written as far for other devices that we're developing right now. So we know we can do it. The real stopping point, and this is where it's a big if, is the control protocol between the head and the radio to control the frequency selection, PL, all that stuff. I have a contact with Kenwood through my friend Steve Bragg, who invented smart beaconing. Some of you guys might know about that. But Steve has been working very closely with Kenwood for years. And he gave me the name of the product manager and contact, and I'm going to contact him. And I'm basically just going to boldly say, look, are you guys done with APRS? Because if you are, would you at least give us the control protocol between the head and the radio? Because we would like to develop something that we could plug into a V7, plug and play. You know, you buy this device, you plug it into the V71, and you turn the V71 essentially into an aftermarket D710 type device. Anyways, I'm just telling this group here internally because I don't have a huge audience right now, but this is just something we're talking about. This is something we're thinking about. We're brainstorming. There's a lot of ifs and variables in this. If we could get that protocol. Now, it may come down to just putting a logic analyzer between it and trying to sniff out the protocol, because it's just TTL data.
Right, that's what I say. I mean, you could always just kind of reverse engineer it.
And it may come down to trying to do that so we can get the basic functionality. Because if you think about it, really all it needs to be do is set the frequency, make sure PL is not turned on, and to put the radio, whether it's in 1200 or 9600 baud. Other than that, that's really the major control that we need. So if we can figure those things out, the rest of it's really easy because we have a lot of the other stuff already developed, you know, in some form or another.
Right.
So anyways, I just thought I'd bring that up with the group because like I said, I don't have a huge audience here, which is good. I don't mind talking about that stuff with a smaller group, but because there's no promises, but
We're
It's
holding
been-
you to everything that you're saying.
that's all right. You go right ahead. But you know, it's a thought that it could be a potential thing to maybe be a bridging point between off-the-shelf COTS equipment and the appliance.
Do you know David Branch?
Boy, that sounds familiar.
Okay, yeah, so he and I used to work together at Juniper, but and that was like before I knew how into APRS he is, but his website is trinityos.com.
Okay.
And I want to say that he had documented quite a bit of the control protocol. Just I'm browsing around on his site. I had actually mirrored his site a while back.
TrinityOS.com came back to not found. Is it Trinity Desktop?
No, I just pasted it in the chat.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah, I try that.
Yeah, that's what I went. Oh, okay. All right, cool.
Yeah, take a look through his archive. He's got some pretty interesting stuff. And if
I
you start
definitely
like
will.
just kind of like browsing the file system, the web file system on his server.
Okay. Yeah, I
there's
had a
some
guy
interesting stuff in
approach
there.
me in email and he said that he was kind of sort of doing what I was proposing, except instead of controlling the radio through the RJ45 interface that you would normally interface between the head and the radio, he was doing it through the CAT
data port.
interface on the back.
Yeah.
And he wrote some custom scripts, so he was using a Pi to do it, and that would work, but that's a little clunkier than I want. I love the idea of handing somebody's device and saying, here, take a good shielded Cat6 cable, plug it into ours, plug it into the V71, and boom, you've got yourself essentially an aftermarket D710 type device. So, all right, yeah, I've got that pulled up, Jeff. I appreciate it. I will, I'll read through all this and see if I can maybe extract some information.
Yeah,
that
and
would,
I'll keep digging through my Google Drive. I've collected just a massive amount of stuff
Okay.
over the years, so I can.
Well, I
make that
appreciate that.
available. Yep, no worries. All right, guys. I don't
Okay,
want to
I'm
keep
done
you guys
talking.
any longer than need be. So unless anybody else says anything,
I have a
that
quick one, Jeff.
go for it, John.
I'm sorry, I was late, so if you've already talked about this, but a bunch of us are gonna be together at the New England ARRL and Delta, what? It's combined, it's New England and also the Hudson River, whatever that is, in Marlboro here later this month. And I was just kind of curious how many people on the call were planning to be there. I know Don's gonna be there presenting with me.
Yeah, it sounds like Tim is going to be there as well.
It's gonna be there.
I'll
just
I
be
think-
seriously mapped it. It's like 10 hours. I was like, oh man, could I make it up there? I'm in Virginia.
Yeah.
But I
Because it's
don't think I
almost
can
like
make
a,
it.
we're gonna do a presentation, but it's also more like a great opportunity for us to do a birds of a feather session and discuss what we're doing with APRS in the future and all that. Get together and we're all gonna bring equipment and run tests. So anyway, I want to make sure everybody's aware of it.
Absolutely.
Jeff, how about a question for John, WB2OSZ?
Go for it.
I'm here.
Good evening, John. During the Appalachian Trail Golden Packet event, when we were doing the 1200 baud testing with the appliance, I had a laptop connected to my Raspberry Pi, and I was seeing the your log of data packets that come across the screen. I saw some interesting stuff, which it would have been nice to be able to capture and analyze at a later time. Do you have any concept of how, if there's a switch in Direwolf or some other mechanism that we can use to capture the packet screen?
Yeah, you could just pipe it into T. Application called TEE. And that'll both store everything in a file and print it on the screen.
Ah, okay. So just use the Linux pipe mechanism and use TEE.
Yeah.
And then specify the name of a file to save it in.
And it'll go on the SD drive, the SD memory in the Pi?
Yeah, that's where you'd write it to.
Yeah, but Don, do you mount, I don't remember, are you remounting the file system in read-only on the appliance image, Don?
Let's see, no, I'm not remounting it in read-only.
Okay, so then
What
that's very
I've gotten is all the logging to go to in memory, not on disk. And so there's no normal writes that occur while Direwolf is running or the OS is running or GPSD is running. But yeah, you could pipe it to any file that's not part of the temp file system.
Yeah, so one thing I'll say, Jeff, is so Raspberry Pis, they are notorious for getting corrupted if there's any writes being done to the SD card and the power is abruptly disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll notice that there's a lot of distros like for like Pi-Star DMR hotspots where they'll boot and then they'll remount the file system in a read-only format, and that's why they do it. Is
Sure,
because
Digibyte
they're
like that as well.
so prone to corruption. So you could, I think you can create, it's like called a RAM disk, and people will use that. And then I don't remember all the particulars, but it's just something to be conscientious of, that if you're going to do it, to make sure that you do a graceful shutdown of the Pi when you're done.
Understood.
Yeah.
You could
John,
also,
one more question. Go ahead. I'm sorry, John, you gonna say something?
yeah, you could use a USB thumb drive and write it to the thumb drive.
Yep, do that as well, to mount that as a
Yep.
disk. Okay.
You do that.
John, one more question. Is there any, oh, a good thing we're remote because nobody can hit me. Is there any concept of Direwolf on Windows?
Yeah.
Yeah, runs on Windows, runs on Macintosh,
Okay.
runs
Great,
on
that's-
BSD.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Does it run on BIOS? No, I'm just kidding. I have to be a holdout for BIOS.
Hey, Jeff.
Does it run on OS2 Warp?
Don't go there.
I actually have the original floppy disks for that.
Oops, too.
From a long time ago. Hey, I just wanted to thank you for being the facilitator of the event. You've done a great job. I mean, we all have time limitations and we all have family and jobs. So you've been amazing in keeping things together and organizing the group. So I just wanted to say that.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I found out about the event 4 years ago and I just like latched onto it. And then I guess it was like right around the time we had to move from Yahoo groups to groups.io that Bob and I started talking, and I don't know, one thing led to another, and I just kind of became the implicit owner of it. And I guess I'm hoping you guys can tell I really enjoy doing it. I put a ton of work into it this year, with the idea being that all the work that I did this year laid the groundwork for the following year, so that there wouldn't be anywhere near as much that needs to be done in the future, that it would be very much rinse and repeat. So that was the goal. I guess see how that worked out come, March, April timeframe next year when we start really ramping this up. But yeah, thanks, Jim. I really appreciate that. All right, guys. Well, if nothing else, thank you so much for your time and for participating, and for anyone who did not participate this year, thank you for your interest in it, and definitely would love to get you pulled in to the event next year, and hopefully we'll be able to get our Canadian friends to join us next year. That's it.
Well, take care all. And Jeff, thanks so much for organizing this.